Look at this attack. Kylian Mbappe, Vinícius Jr, Jude Bellingham. Now imagine adding another winger. So explosive, so fearless, that defenders don't even know which side to protect anymore. Most clubs would call that impossible. Real Madrid, call it the next transfer window. But here's the part almost nobody is talking about. This isn't another Galácticos project. This isn't Florentino Perez collecting superstars for headlines. This is something far more dangerous. José Mourinho is quietly rebuilding the exact type of team that once terrified Europe. And if history repeats itself, Barcelona may have a much bigger problem than they realize. Because Mourinho has already built one of the greatest counterattacking teams football has ever seen. Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema, Ángel Di Maria, Mesut Ozil. A team that scored 121 league goals, collected 100 points, and made even the strongest opponents look completely helpless whenever possession changed hands. That wasn't luck. It wasn't individual brilliance. It was a system. A system designed to punish every mistake within seconds. Now, more than a decade later, Mourinho believes he has something even better. Not because today's players are bigger names. Because today's players fit his football perfectly. Kylian Mbappe doesn't need introducing. 31 league goals. European Golden Shoe. 10 World Cup goals. The most devastating transition striker on the planet. Vinícius Jr remains the player defenders fear more than almost anyone else. Double him. Kick him. Force him backwards. He still finishes every season with elite numbers. Then there's Jude Bellingham. Not a striker. Not a winger. Yet somehow, he keeps arriving exactly where goals are scored. Almost as if he sees spaces before everyone else even realizes they exist. And now, Real Madrid are preparing to spend over $130 million on one more attacker. Yan Diamande, a teenager, a Bundesliga Rookie of the Year, a winger who completed more successful dribbles than almost every player in Europe. Most people think he's arriving to compete with Vinícius. Others believe he'll replace Rodrigo. They're both wrong. Because Mourinho didn't ask Madrid to sign Diamande for what he does with the ball. He wanted him for what he does to the defenders who don't have the ball. That's where this story becomes frightening. Because Mourinho isn't building an attack around individual stars. He's creating impossible decisions. Help Vinícius. Diamande destroys the opposite side. Stay wide. Mbappe attacks the middle. Follow Mbappe. Bellingham arrives completely free. Every defensive solution creates another problem. And that's exactly how Mourinho likes it. Not beautiful. Not complicated. Just impossible to defend. But before any of that can happen, before Diamande wears white, before Mourinho rebuilds another dynasty, there's one question Madrid have to answer. A question that could decide whether this project becomes legendary or collapses before it even begins. And the answer isn't Mbappe. The biggest mistake people make is believing Mourinho's system starts with the forwards. It doesn't. It starts with the player touching the ball first. Because counterattacks don't fail when attackers run too slowly. They fail when the first decision is wrong. That's exactly what happened to Real Madrid last season. After Toni Kroos retired and Luka Modric slowly disappeared from the starting 11, Madrid still had world-class attackers. But something kept breaking. The transition. Too many recoveries. Ended with safe passes. Too many opportunities. Died before Mbappe or Vinícius even started running. José Mourinho saw the problem immediately. And instead of searching for another goal scorer, he searched for a brain. That's why Bernardo Silva arrived. Many supporters looked at his age, 32 years old, and immediately called it another short-term signing. Mourinho saw something completely different. Control. For almost a decade under Pep Guardiola, Bernardo mastered one of football's hardest skills. Making the correct decision. Under maximum pressure. Not the spectacular pass. Not the risky pass. The correct one. The moment Madrid recover possession, Bernardo already knows where the next attack will happen. He doesn't need 5 touches. He doesn't need to slow the game unnecessarily. One look. One pass. Suddenly, Vinícius is attacking empty grass. Diamande is isolating a fullback. Mbappe is sprinting behind the defense. Everything begins because one midfielder refused to panic. That's exactly how Mourinho's greatest teams always worked. People remember Ronaldo finishing attacks. They remember Drogba bullying defenders. They remember Milito scoring in finals. Almost nobody remembers who started those attacks. Mourinho does. Because without that first intelligent pass, none of the goals ever happen. And once Bernardo breaks the first defensive line, Madrid become almost impossible to contain. 3 runners. 4 passing options. Defenders retreating. Midfielders chasing. One mistake, and the match changes forever. But here's where Mourinho's project becomes even more interesting. Because Bernardo isn't actually the player Mourinho believes will transform this team. He's only preparing the stage for someone else. And that player might quietly become the most important footballer in Real Madrid's entire attack. That player isn't Mbappe. It isn't Vinícius. And surprisingly, it isn't even Yan Diamande. It's Jude Bellingham. For 2 years, Madrid have been asking Bellingham to solve everyone else's problems. Cover for Vinícius. Protect Mbappe. Drop deeper. Help the midfield. Win second balls. Press. Recover. Create. Score. He became everything. Except what made him special. And that's why his numbers quietly dropped. Not because he became a worse footballer. Because he was playing farther away from the only place where he truly hurts opponents. The penalty area. Go back to his first season in Madrid. 23 goals. 13 assists. He wasn't playing like a midfielder. He was arriving like a striker. Nobody tracked him. Nobody expected him. By the time defenders realized he was there, the ball was already in the net. That's the version Mourinho wants back. Not a holding midfielder. Not a box-to-box runner. A hunter. Someone who appears exactly when defenders stop looking. Now imagine what happens if Diamande joins. Vinícius attacks the left. Diamande stretches the right. Mbappe occupies both center-backs. For 90 minutes. The back line keeps shifting. Sliding. Covering. Communicating. Trying to survive. Then, Bellingham arrives. Late. Completely free. Exactly the same pattern that made Frank Lampard one of Mourinho's greatest weapons at Chelsea. Exactly the same movements that turned players like Kaká and Ozil into devastating creators during Mourinho's first spell in Madrid. This isn't coincidence. It's repetition. Mourinho has always believed the most dangerous player isn't the one defenders are watching. It's the one they forget. Bellingham becomes that forgotten man. And once that starts happening, Madrid's attack becomes almost impossible to predict. Stop Mbappe. Vinícius destroys you. Stop Vinícius. Diamande attacks. Close Diamande. Bellingham appears. Step toward Bellingham. Mbappe is already behind you. Every solution creates another disaster. That's why Mourinho pushed so hard for this rebuild. He isn't collecting stars. He's assigning roles. Every runner, every movement, every pass already has a purpose. And if there's one footballer capable of making that entire machine explode, it's the 130 million euro teenager who still hasn't even put on a Real Madrid shirt. Because Yan Diamande isn't arriving to become another superstar. He's arriving to make everyone around him even more dangerous. And that's exactly why Real Madrid are willing to spend more than $130 million on him. Not because he's already one of the world's biggest stars. Because he changes the geometry of the pitch. Watch Diamande carefully. He doesn't wait for the ball. He forces defenders to make decisions before he even touches it. Stay too close. He spins in behind. Give him space. He drives directly at you. Try to show him outside. He cuts inside with frightening acceleration. That's why he completed more successful dribbles than almost anyone in Europe during his breakthrough Bundesliga season. But Mourinho doesn't care about highlight reels. He cares about what happens after the dribble. Can it create panic? Can it force a defender out of position? Can it open one passing lane? Because if the answer is yes, Mbappe is already attacking it. Bellingham is already arriving. Vinícius is already sprinting toward the far post. Diamande doesn't have to score 30 goals. He only has to create chaos. And chaos is exactly where Mourinho's football becomes unstoppable. Which raises one final question. If this attack is already terrifying on paper, what happens when Mourinho finally teaches every single player to attack as one? That's the difference between a team full of stars and a team built to win everything. Talent alone doesn't create dynasties. Structure does. That's why Mourinho keeps repeating the same idea everywhere he goes. Defend together. Attack together. Suffer together. Win together. It worked at Porto. It worked at Chelsea. It worked at Inter. It nearly conquered Europe during his first spell at Real Madrid. Now, he believes this squad is even more explosive. Because no version of Mourinho has ever coached attackers with this combination of pace. Mbappe. Vinícius. Diamande. 3 players capable of covering 50 yards before defenders even recover their shape. Add Bellingham arriving from deep. Bernardo Silva choosing the perfect first pass. And fullbacks like Cucurella and Dumfries constantly joining the attack. And suddenly this doesn't look like 11 individuals anymore. It looks like one enormous wave. The frightening part? Most of these players are still approaching their peak years. They haven't reached their ceiling yet. Which means Mourinho isn't building a team for one season. He's building one that could dominate Europe for years. And if everything clicks, the rest of football won't be asking whether Real Madrid have the best attack in Europe. They'll be asking how anyone is supposed to stop it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Real Madrid's biggest opponent might not be Barcelona. It might not be Manchester City. It might not even be the Champions League. It could be their own dressing room. Because history has already shown us what happens when too many superstars want to become the main character. José Mourinho has lived through it before. He challenged Iker Casillas. He argued with Sergio Ramos. He demanded more from Cristiano Ronaldo. He even benched players the football world believed were untouchable. Not because he enjoyed controversy, but because his rule has always been simple. Nobody is bigger than the system. That rule is about to face its toughest test yet. Will Mbappe press when Mourinho asks? Will Vinícius sacrifice moments of freedom for defensive balance? Will Diamande accept learning before starting every week? Will Bellingham trust the process instead of trying to solve every problem alone? Those answers will decide everything. Because Mourinho doesn't need 11 better footballers. He needs 11 players thinking exactly the same way. If he gets that, Real Madrid won't simply challenge for trophies. They'll become the team every opponent hopes to avoid. And judging by what we've already seen, that transformation may have already begun. And maybe that's why the rest of Europe is watching this rebuild so carefully. Not because Real Madrid signed another superstar. They've always done that. This feels different. For the first time in years, every transfer appears connected. Diamande stretches the pitch. Bernardo controls the tempo. Cucurella secures the left side. Dumfries attacks the right. Bellingham gets his freedom back. Mbappe becomes the finisher. Vinícius becomes even more dangerous. Every piece supports another piece. That's not how Galácticos were built. That's how championship teams are built. Of course, none of this guarantees success. Football has never worked that way. Injuries happen. Pressure changes players. Big dressing rooms can collapse overnight. Even Mourinho knows that better than anyone. But if this project survives those moments, if every player accepts the role Mourinho has prepared for them, Real Madrid could become something the modern game hasn't seen for a long time. A team that doesn't rely on moments of brilliance, because the system itself creates them. And once that happens, stopping Real Madrid won't be about stopping Mbappe, or Vinicius, or Diamande. It will mean stopping an entire machine. And history suggests that's almost impossible. So, is Yan Diamande really worth over $130 million? Maybe that's the wrong question. Because Real Madrid aren't paying for the player he is today. They're paying for the player Mourinho believes he can become. The same way they once invested in Cristiano Ronaldo. The same way they trusted Vinicius before the goals arrived. The same way they believed Jude Bellingham could become the heartbeat of the club. This isn't just another transfer. It's a statement. A message to Barcelona. A warning to Europe. And a reminder that Real Madrid never stay quiet for long. They rebuild. They adapt. And sooner or later, they come back. Now the responsibility belongs to José Mourinho. Can he turn individual brilliance into collective dominance one more time? Can he build another attack capable of rewriting football history? We won't know until the season begins. But one thing already feels certain. If this project reaches its full potential, defenders across Europe won't be asking how to stop Mbappe. They won't be asking how to stop Vinicius. They won't even be asking how to stop Yan Diamande. They'll be asking the only question that really matters. How do you stop Real Madrid when every single attack can kill you?